Alright, now I'm going to come in and start to pick up the inside of the brow ridge. Or I'm sorry, the outside of the eye socket, I should say, that's more accurate. And then picks up the bottom of the brow ridge. And then this just transitions into the bridge of the nose. Okay, and you'll notice here that it gets a little thinner at the center and then flares out slightly at the ball of the nose. Let's take a look if that works here. And yeah, it definitely does. We have along the bridge of the nose where the nasal bone ends and the cartilage begins. This is all a bit more narrow and then gets wider at the ball of the nose. And we'll talk a little bit more about that transition later. So one of the reasons why I'm taking my time, and I really want you to be aware that these are not just a bunch of random lines, but that they actually are designed to describe plane changes and relate to what's happening anatomically on the face. Alright, let's go ahead and bring in the top of the brow ridge. And then I'm going to bring this line along here, and again we'll talk about this a little more from an anatomical standpoint later. But what's happening with this line is that it's running just about where you would expect the end of the nasal bone to be and for the cartilage to start, which is oftentimes a landmark because there's a plane change where that occurs. Alright, so notice here too that this, we can kind of follow this along here, and that it's not the outside corner of the mouth, but this larger shape more along the outside of the mouth. In this case it's a bit more oblong than it is round. Okay, and then this smaller circle in there, and let's go ahead and take a look. We're just going to create a line that runs from the upper outside of the nostril across to the ball of the nose, and then follow this orbicularis oris muscle around towards the outside of the mouth. And the corner of the mouth doesn't end on that muscle. There's a little bit of that muscle shape there, and then this is going to wrap around and just kind of overlap the ball of the chin, or the chin box, as Bern Hogarth might say. Alright, and now lining up with that transition from the bone to the cartilage, we can start to indicate this side plane here. And let's see how much of that, we are seeing just a little hint of that on this side. Pulls up and we get a little bit of a transition, well actually I should say a pretty clear transition between the front plane, side plane of the nose, to this underlying plane there. Okay, and that gives us that. And we can follow this, and this is really a really nice rhythm that transitions from the ball of the nose down to the septum, that little barrier between the nostrils. And then we'll take a look here, and we have this pretty clear transition from the ball of the chin like so, and we're starting to see this begin to fall together. Looking at the shape of the bottom or the lower lip, well, both the upper and lower lip is important, because that's going to, again, all of these things are going to help lend themselves to a likeness depending on how accurate you can make them. In this case, the lower lip has a bit more of a rounded shape, maybe flattens off just slightly at the center. And this is by way of plane change. You can see how sometimes it looks like the lower lip ends before the upper lip. Of course, you know, the opening of the mouth is as wide as it is, and you know, so anyway, this isn't actually shorter, but the fleshy part of it can oftentimes come up a little bit shorter than the upper lip, and so you get this kind of elongated stretched out M shape. And then a softer, more rounded shape at the bottom. Glenn Vilppu, he may still refer to it this way, but when I studied with him, he referred to this as the seagull on the nest. Yeah, nice way to help remember that. All right. And then let's not forget this little transition here. And we can see it a little bit here. And if I was to follow this around, I think I would bring it more in alignment with the outside corner of the mouth, you know, so maybe somewhere in there. All right, and then we have this protrusion, which is a combination of the shape of the skull and muscle that sits on top of it. And then if I step over just a little bit from here, kind of coming up off of the outside edge of the eye socket, the upper outside corner, this is going to help me find that temporal area, which is also the outside or the side plane of the head. So here's where we start to transition from the front. This is usually a bit more forward facing, and then we move into somewhat of a diagonal shape, or diagonal angle, diagonal plane, and then back to the side plane. So if we're looking at this, at the skull from overhead, oftentimes we're going to see this kind of egg shape here. A little bit wider towards the back of the head, more narrow towards the front. Here's the nose. Let's give you our sense of bearings here. Forehead here, and then that diagonal plane transitioning to the side plane. And that, of course, will be important when you start applying values to this. Now the nice thing about this is that oftentimes we struggle with getting the eye socket in place and getting the eyes lined up right. And one of the nice things about this abstraction is that it creates the eye socket for you. And then all you have to do is just place the ball of the eye in that socket. All right, and I think that pretty much takes care of the abstraction part of it, and then we'll come back after that and add the value or rendering part of the homework assignment.